This is the Average to Savage podcast with Paul Guarino. Everyone and anyone, athletes, celebs, and much more.
What's up, everybody? I'm back for another episode of the Average Savage podcast. Our special guest today is actor, writer, filmmaker, and producer Bobby Del Rio. Bobby, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How about you? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
For sure. And let's just jump right into it. Could you give me a little brief background about yourself?
Yeah, I've been an actor, writer, director for about 20 years up here in Canada, in Toronto. I do work around the world, so I've worked in the U.S. quite a bit, but I am based in Toronto. I also do the occasional sports writing, so, I've had a couple columns the past few years. Right now I write about basketball, specifically the Toronto Raptors, but more general NBA content. And I've written about fantasy basketball. I had a column for a couple of years in the States. Gotcha. And that's me, yeah.
Gotcha. So how did you get into the quote-unquote Hollywood scene?
I mean, I guess I always knew I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
Right? Ever since I was a child, I was leading plays, and it was always something I did. So the first U.S. movie that I did, I had a small part in a movie called Cheaters with Jeff Daniels for HBO. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure how old I was. I was 19 or 20. I was in school. I was still in university in acting school, theater school. And, I had an agent. I did, so I guess I've just been in the system over 20 years.
Gotcha. And, what's it like to go on, an audition?
It's weird. I mean, I presume you've been on job interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's weird because you've got this sort of formality of the job interview, but you're not there to necessarily talk about what you've done. I mean, that can happen. They'd be like, "Oh, why do you think you'd be good with this job?" "Oh, well, I think I'd be great." And you've come up with some lie that makes you sound good.
Yeah.
That can happen very informally, but for the most part, you have to have that same job interview energy, but you still have to be an artist.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's "Oh, hey, thanks for coming in." You're like, "Oh, no problem." And they're like, "Okay, go." And then it's you've killed 4 teenagers, and you're like, "I will find you, and I will kill you." And they're like, "That was good. Thanks for coming in." "Oh, no problem. See you later." It's it's weird. You're constantly going back and forth between energies. It's kind of like a date. Dates are kind of weird because you have to sort of be somewhat formal and professional.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychopath, and I'm a provider, and we could have a good time together. And then you also have to demonstrate the qualities of I'm fun and aren't I so sexy right now? And you really know how to be, but you know that you're being judged in every second.
Yeah, for sure. So how has it changed maybe since you've been at the beginning and now?
Auditions specifically here?
Yeah. Well,
the big thing is that now everything is self-tape.
Okay.
So
you just send it in?
Well, it just means, you're not usually in the room.
Oh, okay.
It's you kind of just, I do all these auditions on my phone now, and all these actors are tasked with the sort of expense and inconvenience, quite frankly, of having to set up your own studio in your apartment, or in some cases people will actually pay money to rent, essentially a studio and a studio's services to make tapes. And you're not necessarily getting the gig, right? So it's some people will pay $60 to make this tape to try and get a job, and often you don't get the job. So, and especially in the self-tape world, whereas if you have to actually get 20 people into a room, you're paying for people's time and you're scheduling assistants and whatnot. There's costs, but for self-tapes, anybody can send in a self-tape. So what happens is that now for every audition, there's so much more competition because anybody can send in a tape. So it's harder to get jobs and it's more work.
Yeah, for sure. But are they going to open the people that just randomly send them into?
I think it depends. For the most part, I'm an ACTRA member, which is the union for professional film and television actors.
Okay.
It's Canadian SAG, basically.
Yeah.
So the things that I audition for almost always go through agents. So there's, somewhat of a vetting process. I have a good agent, right? So it's hard to get with a good agency. They have to pick you, and there's a lot of people who want to go there. So then the casting directors will go to all the agents. So all the actors have already been somewhat vetted there. And then they vet them again. So it's the quality of the agent and the quality of the actor. But now when you throw in the tapes, generally what they're doing is they're still sending it to that agent-represented pool. But not always. I mean, occasionally you'll see, people will just post on their Facebook or email or something about, send in a tape. But for the most part, especially for the real jobs, the big jobs, for the recognized shows, it's all going through agents.
Gotcha. What are some of the shows and movies you've been a part of?
I've done a lot of stuff over 20 years. A lot of stuff is that we shoot up here in Canada is service. So basically they cast smaller roles in larger American productions. Mm-hmm. But generally the productions that come up here are productions that are looking for a discount on cost, right? Because we have all these big subsidies. So you've got you get sort of a lot of mid-tier movies. The first thing I ever did was this movie, Cheaters for HBO, Chef Daniels. And then I think that same year I did a U.S. movie of the week called The Mary Kay Letourneau Story with Penelope Ann Miller. Mm-hmm. And then, they also have Canadian series up here. I did a show called Instant Star that was also on, I think it's called the N Network or something in the U.S. Mm-hmm. It's the same people that did Degrassi, and I did a show up here called Blue Murder, and there was a sci-fi series up here called The Dresden Files, and, it just goes on, and lots and lots and lots of stuff, right?
So what was your favorite one so far? Or a couple favorites?
Honestly, the stuff that I prefer the most is the more independent stuff. Yeah. So right now, prepping to act in a web series that was sold to television called My Roommate's an Escort.
Yeah.
And it's been one of the most successful Canadian web series. Got over 1 million viewers for season 1. So I'm the male lead in the show, and we're shooting up in Sault Ste. Marie in 3 weeks. For 3 weeks. So it's, it's kind of a big job. But it's also I've become friends with the creators of the show, and it's mm-hmm. really good writing, and the role is good, and the people are awesome. So,
and And you said it's coming to, what was that?
Well, okay, so season 1 it's on YouTube.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And so for season 2, they've gotten more money. And season 1 was such a big hit that it got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
And great reviews and festival coverage and all that. So for season 2, they were able to get more money. So it's going to sort of be, I would imagine, a little more hyped. Because as you have more resources, you can do more things.
Yeah, definitely.
And now it's a proper show. At the time, it was really just, no, I wouldn't say an experiment, but it was really independent. Where now it's even with my agent, it was I was talking to my agent about the job and everything, and he was telling me how there was a breakdown, and so it was the same thing. It's sent to all the agents, and for season 1, they didn't go through the agents. It was kind of like friends, right? It was hey, do you want to do this? It's oh, cool, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then season 2 is already much more of a professional experience, and they're we might be flying you to location. And I was oh, what?
Yeah.
A plane? I took the TTC last time, the subway,
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So basically a project with friends turned into something bigger now.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you like to do best, acting, writing, or producing?
Well, given those 3 options, I think most people would concede that producing is the least fun.
Yeah.
It's, the most work. It's basically you're doing all the logistics, all the business work, and often raising the money, sometimes spending the money. So that's never good. You do get power that way, but it's a lot of work. So I'm sort of somewhat torn between acting and writing. Acting is really, really fun for me, and that was my entry point in the industry. Mm-hmm. But as a writer, I've had quite a lot of success. First in theater for many years, and now in the screenwriting world.
Gotcha. What are your goals for 2019?
Wow, what a good question. It's such a weird industry because, literally, you could be doing nothing for months, and then you get a call and now you're busy for the next few months. So for me, I really do simplify. So I'm going up to Sault Ste. Marie for 3 weeks this month, playing, like a really, really, like I'm the male lead in the show. It's a pretty big part. So I just want to focus on that and do the best job I can. And like, I know that there's going to be a marketing campaign and like a lot's going to happen for it.
Yeah.
But I can't really think about that. All I can really, it's like being an athlete. You've interviewed a lot of athletes and stuff like that, right? And they all pretty much say the same thing. And I had the athlete's mentality that way as well, where I just focus on what I can control.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I had a few actors and actresses too on the show, and they pretty much say the same thing about the auditions and the workload, and just like you just said, like some months you might not be working, and you might be working for 3 weeks or 3 months or whatever.
Yeah, and I think where people freak out or they burn out. I mean, I've been in it over 20 years professionally doing this, right? Like working with like around the world, some of the best people. It's like some people get overwhelmed when they are always thinking big picture. I need to get here. I need to do this, and it's always like, and the reality is that unless you're making your own work, and I've done that as well. It's very random. There's so much that's out of your control. You don't know when you're going to get a job. You don't know how long the job is going to be. As an actor, you don't even know like if they're going to keep you. Like you could have the job. I remember I was in a commercial for a beer for Rickard's Red. I don't know if you have that there. I think it's Canadian, but a couple years ago, and I got paid very well. I was like, all right, I'm in this commercial. And it was pretty cool. It was like all this crazy stuff happens, and I come in at the end. I'm like, "Hey guys, what happened?" And it's like it's like focus on me, like it's kind of the button, like the big joke of the spot. Yeah, it's great. It'd be great for coverage, exposure, all this. So the commercial finally airs, right? And I've been telling people, "Oh yeah, I'm in this commercial. It's gonna be great." And I watched the commercial. It's finally there, and they do the whole commercial, and it's gonna go to my part. And instead it cuts to the logo, commercial's over. I'm like, where am I? They cut me out. They cut me out of the spot.
Oh my God. So
now they still paid me.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah, so I still made good money on it, but it's still like, but I'm not in it.
Yeah.
But I knew that I was in trouble on the day. Like I was like, this is suspicious, because my part came in at the end. But I don't know if they just screwed up or whatever, but they called me in early. So when you're on set as a union member, like once it gets to like, I don't know what it is, like 10 hours or something like that,
yeah,
you start to go into overtime. So you start to make a lot of money an hour.
Gotcha.
So I'm tracking how many hours. So I didn't go on set until like, I'd been there for 12 hours, maybe 12 and a half hours, just basically sitting in a trailer.
Gotcha.
So people think it's so glamorous, but I'm just sitting in this room for 12 and a half hours. Okay? So they have, but I don't know, where I was, they happened to have like storyboards of the shot, of like the shots that they're going to have for the commercial. So I was like, all right, well, I mean, I'm there for 12 and a half hours, right? So I was just looking at what's around me. Yeah. And I noticed in the storyboard that my character wasn't in it. And I was like, this must be a mistake. I was like, maybe it's because they knew I was going to be here, so they just didn't want to have my character, but it was like suspicious, right? I was like, like, I think I started researching what happens if I get cut out of a commercial on Google or something. Like,
yeah.
And then I was like, okay, so they still have to pay me one cycle. They have to pay me from the time they pay me. So I knew whatever happens, I'm gonna make my money. But yeah, no. And then, sure enough, they just didn't use me. Yeah. I shot it. I recorded it. They even did it in 2 languages, so it was funny, right? Because we're bilingual, because there's English and French. So I met like the French version of me. So they had it was very weird. It was like there was like 4 leads, so I was one of them. But they had both languages, and they would just shoot the same spots back and forth between English and French. So it would be like, English version, okay, we're done, cut. And then they would just basically get the French guys to take the spots of the English guys. And then they would just go back and forth all day. And then they would shoot the French guys, and then replace with the English guys, and they would just go shot for shot. essentially making 2 spots so they could do both languages. But I remember talking to the French version of me, and I told him about the storyboard thing, and he was like, "Yep." He was also worried.
So did his part get put in, or his part got cut out too?
Well, I mean, I didn't see the French part, but
Gotcha.
you know, presumably what happened to me happened to him.
Gotcha. That's great. That's crazy. At least you got paid though.
Yeah, no, I got paid well, so I mean, it was good that way. But
Yeah.
I don't know, it was kind of a bummer because you're like in this commercial. It's, you know, even though I've been doing it for so long, it's always fun to be on TV. You know.
Yeah, definitely. So how'd you get into sports writing and basketball writing?
I started doing fantasy sports.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I've been just as a hobby, like sort of like I'm like kind of the best at fantasy sports of all my friends kind of thing.
Yeah.
I just love it. Like in high school, I was the guy that would just organize the baseball pool.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I'm 41. I mean, we didn't even have the internet when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So, like, literally, it's like we're like drafting in person and writing down the names of the players. Who do you want? I'll take Joe Carter. I'll take Carlos Baerga. You know, whatever. And then I think the stats would be published in the newspaper for baseball once a week on Tuesdays. So what I would do is I would add up all the stats for all the players for all the teams by hand every Tuesday. And then one guy beat me on the last day, and then he was like, "I got you." Whatever. I was like, I should have kicked his ass, but anyway, okay. But that's what I did by hand. So formally, I just always like enjoyed doing this kind of thing. So a few years ago, I just follow a lot of the prominent prospect writers because I'm in a bunch of dynasty. Are you a fantasy guy?
Yeah.
Okay, so I play mostly Dynasty.
Okay.
Because I like to own it. I like to destroy somebody and steal their soul and then do it every year for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And also I love like prospects and rookies. And, you know, I was a big card collector guy also when I was in high school. So, and I have an economics sort of education. So I kind of like the idea of treating players like stocks and bonds.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not sure how much they like it, but whatever. So I like to, you know, like there's the Blue Jays had dominant performance by a rookie pitcher yesterday named Trent Thornton.
Yep.
Who was like a Houston Astros sort of minor prospect, and then our team sucked, so he got a start and had 8 strikeouts in 5 innings and shut out the terrible Tigers. Those guys suck. Yeah. So I went and picked him up in 5 leagues yesterday, and we'll see if that pans out. But I like the idea of like, oh, get in on early, and now you've got, you know, whatever, the stock that can help you out forever. So I would follow the writers who basically have intelligent things to say about prospects. Mm-hmm. So I believe it was John Sickles' old site, Minor League Ball, and there was another writer there named, I think it's Ray Guilfoyle. I think that's how you say it. And I was just following him because he always had really good things to say about minor league baseball prospects. And I followed him on Twitter. And then I didn't know, I guess he ran a fantasy site of his own called Fate Teams, which is like a Sports Nation, like Fox offshoot, which makes sense because I believe minor league ball was Fox as well. So one day, I didn't know him, but I just followed him, and Ray just posted, "Hey, we're looking to hire a fantasy basketball writer. Anyone interested?" And, you know, I've been like a screenwriter and a playwright for, at that point, maybe 15 years. But I also was like, I love fantasy sports, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll apply, you know. And I just was like, oh, I'd be interested. And then very quickly, it's like, oh, okay, well, what's your portfolio or whatever? And I was like, it's like, well, I don't really have a portfolio, but like I have been a screenwriter and a playwright for a long time. And it was like, okay, well, why don't you write an article and we'll see if you're any good, right? And presumably said the same thing to other people. I'm not sure. Yeah. And then I wrote an article and it was really good. And he's like, all right, okay, let's try you out. Once you know, basically I was on probation, so I just write a couple more. And then can you do some, you know, what would like a point guard rankings look like or something? Yeah. So then I did it, and it was like good. And he was like, okay, let's try it out. You got the job. I was like, oh, cool. So then my first few jobs were basically creating rankings for all the positions. So like power forward, center, small forward, all this stuff. And I don't know what happened. I mean, I don't know if it was just good or if it was like a slow week or whatever, but I started getting my articles republished by Yahoo Sports almost immediately.
Okay.
which I thought was just normal, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, no.
And it was like, oh, like that's kind of cool. And I remember I told Ray, oh, isn't that cool that Yahoo Sports republishes us? And he's like, they do what? And there it is. It's like Yahoo Sports. There's my name, Bobby Del Rio, and here's my rankings. And they were pretty thorough, and I had good explanations, and I was using advanced stats as well, which at the time, now like it's common in basketball writing where they'll mention things like true shooting percentage and blah, blah, blah. But at the time, like, nobody was using those terms. But I started using them because I was like, I wanted my articles to stand out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then it was pretty cool, and I started to build a readership, and then I swear to God, I'd only been there like a month, maybe. And then I get DM'd by Andy Behrens from Yahoo Sports, who I didn't know at all, who was like kind of like my idol. Like, I just loved his style. He knew all his fantasy stuff. He was also hilarious, and I always read his articles for years when I was just a player. And then he DMs me and he's like, "Hey, like, we've been reading your articles and they're good. Would you like to compete in the Yahoo Experts League?" So I got invited to the Yahoo Friends and Family League, which is basically just, kind of the most well-known fantasy basketball writers in the U.S. mostly were invited to be part of this thing. And so I told my editor, and he was like, "What?" I was like the first person at the company to ever be invited into that league. So I kept writing about it, and then I ended up finishing second place, and I lost to Yahoo's Scott Pianowski in the finals. But it was, pretty amazing. Like, I kind of went from just like, oh, this is a fun hobby, to like, I'll try this, to like an industry expert very quickly, and then competing against industry experts, and not only holding my own, but really dominating that league.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was pretty cool. Like, it was a really cool experience, and it started my sports writing career for sure.
Yeah, the power of social media, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're big into basketball and baseball fantasy?
Yeah, I play all of them. I mean...
You do American football, too?
Yeah, and hockey up here in Canada is a big one.
Yeah.
Basketball is my favorite. It's my favorite sport. I think baseball might be my best. Yeah. Because baseball is more logical statistically than basketball. Basketball is odd. You just have weird, like in baseball, if a guy hits a lot of home runs, you're going to get a lot of guys.
Yeah.
And if a guy who scores a lot of runs, if he steals a lot of bases, he'll probably score more runs. And if the pitcher gets a lot of strikeouts, he'll probably get more wins. Like, it's like this kind of, like, it's kind of like there's more sort of like correlated stats.
Yeah, definitely.
Where in basketball, it's weird, man. I mean, you got some guys, he gets a lot of rebounds and he shoots threes, but he can't hit free throws, but he gets steals. And this guy is like, this guy will pass the ball and he gets blocks, but he can't shoot. So you're constantly going, wait, what? Like, basketball, you have to know the guys. You have to know who plays and does what. For baseball, you don't really need to know at all.
Yeah, that's true. You ready for some fun questions?
I thought those were the fun questions.
Oh, well, yeah, those were too, but how'd you get the nickname Bob, man?
So, if you ever want a nickname of your preference, just start calling yourself that. All right. And other people will follow suit. I actually named myself during Frosh Week of undergrad when I was at U of T, during my first year for economics. And it was, whatever, we had these t-shirts, you just put like a name tag. It was kind of a funny design. So I don't know why, I just wrote Bob Man. I just thought that would be interesting. And then, I don't know, people started calling you Bob Man after a while. And then I did this thing in the industry where I would write very, very formal, like, emails, and then I would sign off Bob Man, which I thought was hilarious, and, it created some awkward situations, but I thought it was actually funny that it was awkward, because then people would respond to me, and sometimes, if they had a good sense of humor, they'd be like, "Hey, Bob Man."
Yeah.
And other people would be like, well, Bob. I don't know if that would be possible, considering it.
Yeah, gotcha.
So now I don't know. I guess I've been doing it for so long that people call me Bob Man like all the time.
And what do you like to do in your free time when you're not working?
Who are you, my mother? I mean, this, I don't know. I work all the time, and then I guess, I'm always researching sports following sports. But then it's like I'm also a sports writer. Like I'm going to have a basketball column right now. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that's kind of work too.
Yeah.
So I guess nothing. Now I'm gonna cry.
So yeah, but the sports is the fun work. Or so
Yeah, it doesn't feel like. Well, also, I mean, acting and writing. Yeah. I love that too. Yeah. I work out a lot, so that.
Okay, there you go.
Maybe that counts as.
All right, last one. Can you give me your like top 5 favorite movies ever?
My favorite
movies ever.
Oh man, I was also a programmer for 5 years at a festival in Toronto. So I watched a lot of movies and very picky about movies. So it would be very, very hard for me to, I'd have to take a lot of time and write a master's thesis about the 5 best films of all time. But I will say 5 of my favorite films will be from different eras, because I think different films say different things about our culture at different times. Mm-hmm. So Citizen Kane, which was one of the most innovative movies of all time and still holds up today. It's a great classic film. The Godfather.
Okay.
Maybe because I'm half Italian, but it changed our entire culture.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction.
Okay.
Which I think changed the contemporary narrative. Basically, since Pulp Fiction, the way screenplays are written in terms of time shifting and sort of accepted narratives and juxtaposition of like comedy with violence, I think became very, very mainstream and accepted. Mm-hmm. Whereas it wasn't that way before. Like Pulp Fiction was quite innovative at the time, but now a lot of movies kind of employ those conventions. And then I'll just throw in a couple of movies that I really enjoy. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which also I think is one of the most creative, movies ever made in terms of really everything, right? Like visually and story. I really appreciate like a complex narrative, like something that kind of shifts back and forth through time and in different ways. And I also really like the movie Her.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that was very like a contemporary love story in a sort of sad technological way, and I think there's just going to be a lot more movies like that because I think that's where our society is headed.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you coming on. And where could they find you on social media? In line with what we were just talking about, my Twitter handle is @BobMan. That's probably the best way to follow what I'm doing. A lot of people are very surprised now that I'm like, how did you get @BobMan? Yeah.
I actually had this guy who I guess he's a rapper who calls himself Bobman, and he wanted to negotiate the purchase of my Twitter handle. Yeah. And then I was like, okay, $10,000. And then he was like, don't worry about it.
There you go. @BobMan, go follow him.
@BobMan on Twitter.
All right, appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me, brother.